ways. Carolyn, come on up here. Carolyn Doyle. She is a San Francisco playwright and actress. I heard her in San Francisco, and I think she's going to tell this story tonight, and it just touched me. So, without further ado, keep it going for Carolyn Doyle. I'll see what I can do about not going over. Kind of long-winded. Also, I'm battling a cough, so if I need to take a tea break here. Do you guys remember watching the Charlie Brown Christmas special on TV? Yeah. Okay, for me, that was back before DVDs and on demand, right? Back when all the kids watched the same 3 channels and came into school the next day to discuss it on the playground and recess. Now, I loved the Charlie Brown Christmas special. I mean, it had a mood unlike anything else. I mean, for one thing, it was slow. And not just by today's, soundbite standards. No, it was meandering. I mean, compare the story crammed into 1964's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer to 1965's A Charlie Brown Christmas. In Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Rudolph is born, and he's shunned because of his shiny nose. And then a year later, he is ousted from the reindeer games, and he runs off with Hermie, the elf who wants to be a dentist. And then a few months later, right, they run into Yukon Cornelius and the Abominable Snowman, and they discover an island of misfit toys. And then, a few months after that, Christmas is almost canceled because Santa's sleigh is fogged in, right? On a Charlie Brown Christmas special, that's about this sad little tree, right? And the true meaning of Christmas, and Chuck's attempt and failure to direct a single rehearsal of a Christmas pageant. But what really set it apart for me was its wistfulness. Its faded tone. And of course, right, the melancholy beauty of that opening number in which grim-faced children skate on a pond to the bleak Christmas time is here. Right? It almost becomes a funeral procession. And where are all the adults? The parents. I mean, I love that, okay? I mean, my mother was never around, and Charlie Brown's wasn't either. It seems so honest, right? And there was never a moral at the end of the story, right? It was just a bunch of resourceful kids making it work on their own. My mom, she was a dinosaur in a lot of ways. She bitterly received her associate's degree from Bryant and Stratton Secretarial School because it's the only education my grandmother would pay for. She had wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer. I often wonder when and how my mother became an alcoholic. I never asked my father. They divorced when I was very young, and I just never thought his version of events would be reliable. In any case, my mother, she didn't really ever recover from her early setbacks and eventually fossilized. My mom was a legal secretary all of her adult life, but she viewed word processing with fear and revulsion. My mom was a steno, a mimeo, a Smith Corona type of gal. She hated her work, but she went off every day in her blousey shirts and her Reebok sneakers, using her ability to type 120 words a minute to keep me in a good school district with a roof over my head and food on the table. She was a single mother, but never received any kind of consistent child support or alimony. She never even fought for it. She just used her ability to type 120 words a minute to keep me in a good school district with a roof over my head and food on the table. Special. That word, coming on the heels of a Charlie Brown Christmas, special. Used in the world of television, it evoked such a sense of escape for me. Of course, it wasn't just a Charlie Brown Christmas that I depended on throughout my adolescence to provide the trademark melancholy of a Peanut special. It was also Snoopy Come Home, A Boy Named Charlie Brown, A Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, and of course, the Halloween special. It's the great pumpkin, Charlie Brown. That Van Gogh-esque night sky that dwarfs Linus as he begins his doomed vigil for the great pumpkin. And the bleak hilarity of Charlie Brown's Halloween candy haul. I Gotta Rock. That was me. As a teenager, I thought my whole life could be summed up by those 4 words. I gotta rock. Ultimately, though, it was the use of a trombone to simulate the off-screen voices of adults. The wah, wah, wah of unseen teachers and parents that I most related to. By 7th grade, I realized my mother was never going to stop drinking. Ever. This epiphany was almost certainly brought on by the fact that my mother had recently stumbled drunk and naked through the first and only slumber party I ever hosted. Yeah. I knew she would never get better, only worse. I fervently wished I could fast forward through my life, as if I wanted to see how I'd end up. If I was going to end up pregnant on welfare, I figured I should stop worrying and give in at the age of 12. So, I decided to go on strike. How does a 7th grader go on strike? Okay, I stopped bathing. I stopped caring about the adolescent pressures to fit in or complete homework assignments on time. It was the junior high version of social suicide, of course. But I figured the gamble was worth it, right, if it shook my mother awake. Eventually, the school's administrators caught on and called my mother in for a meeting. Success. Lying in bed the night before the meeting, I imagined the school's kind and caring administrators waving their administrative wands. And my mom, realizing how she had left me out in the deep end, would come and rescue me and never drink again, become the mother she'd always imagined when she was pregnant. Unfortunately, I didn't consider the fact that I had never unburdened myself to anyone about my mother and her drinking. She showed up at the meeting sober, and that perversely was another betrayal. I had been imagining that she would arrive drunk, right? And the reason for my suffering, for my strike, would become plainly evident, and the wand waving could begin. But she was sober, and I was doomed. No one could figure out what was wrong with me. Me. My mom looked really pretty that day. New manicure, new shoes, so shiny and smelling good. We met in the principal's office. Okay, Mr. Brunger, he was a decent fellow, right? But he had this obsession with owls. It seemed to me like a pathetic thing to collect, right? A grown man filling his office with owl figurines. It seemed like an awkward stab at his perception of an endearing eccentricity. And that gave me a tiny sense of superiority as we sat down to discuss my downhill slide. One of the curses, or I don't know, maybe it's a blessing, of growing up with an alcoholic is an inability to remember a lot of stuff. I mean, some of the unpleasant stuff, it just gets blocked out. So I don't think that meeting was particularly traumatic per se, but I do remember seething on the inside. I knew that the neon signs of alcoholism must be flashing all over my mother and myself, and certainly evidence of the kinds of people who were paid to figure that stuff out. But the neon flashes that I knew my mother and I must be emitting went ignored as we stumbled through a meeting in an office filled with the forced whimsy of owl figurines. So, a few weeks later, in response, Mr. Brunger formed Girls Group. Girls Group consisted of me and the 3 most popular girls in 7th grade. Nan, Pam, and Sarah. Now, Nan and Sarah were really pretty. And Pam, I just think she got grandfathered in, because she was friends with Nan since kindergarten before looks mattered. But anyway, Every 7th grader quickly figured out that girls group was some sort of therapy directed at me. And Nan, Pam, and Sarah were wildly resentful and absolutely had to ensure that no guilt by association occurred with their peers, where it might have quietly faded into the background with my strike of no showers, no bras, no homework. I was now thrust front and center of preteen alienation. Eventually, Mr. Brunner copped the failure of his psychological trial, and girls' group was abandoned a few months later. I never recovered socially. The stink of deformity is hard to shake off after 4th grade. Kids never forget stuff. Nicknames stick. I mean, kids who were obese lose weight and remain fat in their classmates' minds. Girls get contacts that remain pegged as geeks. There was this girl once, Ronette. She came to school once with a dirty neck. Someone noticed. She was dirty neck girl for the next 4 years. So, the strike resumed. I mean, what was the point? Once your name becomes Pigpen, why bother worrying about the cloud of dust that follows you everywhere? My mom, she died when she was 48. I was 24, her only living relative. I had to put her affairs into order, decide what to do with her stuff. She was living in a residential hotel. There really wasn't much. I threw out most of her clothing. I saved a pillowcase that smelled like her hair, and I put it on my own pillow for about a year. But there were these boxes that filled up that room. Boxes and boxes filled with my school pictures, my artwork, my homework from grade school and beyond. I went through all of it, and at the end, I found this small, folded set of pages. It was the principal's report from that ill-fated meeting in 7th grade. And towards the bottom, there was this handwritten note. I have never seen two women who loved each other more. A Charlie Brown Christmas special airs the first week of December every year. It's penciled into my calendar for weeks. I watch it with my 7-year-old daughter. I don't own the video or the DVD. Just not the same. I guess I'm a dinosaur in my own way, too.